This week's episode was brought to you by Eric Inola. Thank you, Eric Inola. It's with the generous support of listeners just like you that helps keep the Whole Rabbit stocked with a litany of liturgical tools we use to cast the demons out of spirit-infested home appliances from the 80s and bind them into a triangle of art to force them to create the content for these episodes. If you'd like to help us keep binding spirits from haunted microwaves or just hear the second half of this episode, please visit www.patreon.com/thewholerabbit, where your monthly donation of just $5 will not only get you the extended version of this episode, but all our episodes, which are now conveniently compatible natively in Spotify. But that's not all. I'll send you a 5x5 high-quality vinyl gourmet sticker of our Big Bunny Baphomet cover art, and the secret keys to our Discord server, where you can tell us about that one time you got possessed by a marsupial and couldn't stop putting Legos in your butt. Special thanks for the ongoing support we've received for Heka Astra's GoFundMe, which is going to help her and her beloved pets Ziggy and Hide survive the harsh Canadian winter by securing an RV and a rental space to park it where she can get back on track, supporting herself with her leatherwork trade. We're still quite a bit away from our goal, and the date of her eviction is coming frighteningly close. If you'd like to help support Heka Astra in this time of dire need, please check out the link in the episode description, or even better, share the GoFundMe page on your social media platform of choice. Thank you again, we really do appreciate the help. If you're wondering where she's been the last few episodes, Heka Astra has been very busy trying to get her whole life packed up and to fit in one of these RV things, and well, once she's settled, we'll have her back on the show and resume doing our tarot episodes. Until then, on this week's episode, we talk about the culturally ubiquitous phenomena of spirit possession, how the Catholic Church has a monopoly on the concept, and why its various manifestations of power can be considered either good or bad, depending on the context. We discuss tongues of flame, spontaneous levitation, strange smells, and the sudden appearance of inexplicable wounds like the stigmata. In the extended edition of the show, we loop back around to describe how these same phenomena are described in Japanese mythology and folklore, before talking about Furbies, demons of the Goetia, and how exorcism works from a Chaos Magick perspective. Thank you, and enjoy the show. What do apostrophes and demonic behavior have in common? They're both signs of possession.
Oh, yeah.
How do you turn a demon into an angel? You scare the hell out of them?
That's cheap.
Why did the demon cross the road? The power of Christ compelled him. Hello everybody, and welcome to The Whole Rabbit, where we don't just tell you about being abducted by UFOs commandeered by hideous psychic praying mantises that hypnotize you into making babies with them for the sake of galactic diversity. Nay, we also explain the nuances of being abducted from within by holy spirits, demons, and everything in between. Whether you're ritually communing with ancient Greek gods, channeling disembodied hippie aliens to sell expensive tickets for a conference on positive thinking to thirsty soccer moms, or just projectile vomiting all over the Roman Catholic priest sent by your family to sprinkle holy water on you a few times a week as Beelzebub himself attempts to burst out of your chest cavity and drink his blood. Because this week, we're discussing the finer points of spirit possession, demonic or otherwise, how it works, and getting the most out of it for fun and profit. I'm your host, Luke Madrid, the Hack Rabbit. I'm joined this week by the multifunctional mystery, Mari Sama.
Howdy, y'all.
The magnetized mechanical meditator, Melkor 5.
What's up?
And the holographic hieroglyph, Heka Astra.
Hello.
In the last few weeks, we've spoken quite a bit about the phenomena of aliens, the numerous ways they appear, and their frightening proclivity for abducting unsuspecting humans for reasons beyond our current understanding. While many entertain a large divide between the world of alien abduction and spiritual happenings, we have demonstrated there are plenty of reasons to suspect they may be connected or even overlap. Likewise, to continue our investigation of such strange, esoteric matters while shifting gears towards spooky season, it only seems right to see how it all pertains to the well-known phenomena of spirit possession. After all, despite what the Catholic Church wants us to assume, there has never been a culture in all of human history that did not have exorcism rituals. Taking this into account, it means that every culture on Earth experiences spirit possession in at least some form or another. Likewise, if we ever want to understand the connection between aliens and spirits, or even just what it means to be human, we should make an effort to understand what spirit possession is, how it works, and what benefits and dangers it holds for those who find themselves becoming a vessel for the divine, the bizarre, and the demonic.
Well said.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. It's not completely a Catholic concept, but pretty much everyone has had this in their culture at some point. The concept of spirit possession, whereby a person becomes the residence for a spirit or sometimes multiple spirits, is a universal concept that we can all relate to. And this is probably going back even before we were in like hunter-gatherer tribes. Like even inanimate objects and entire locations can be subject to housing evil spirits, or good ones for that matter, not just our bodies. And despite most modern debunkers' rationalizations, and also on the other side, religious people claiming all possession as a work of Satan or the devil, it's actually a natural phenomenon that continues to this day, despite what different names we choose to describe it.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's a lot of psychology to be talked about on the topic of possession, but we should talk about the fun stuff before we get there.
One thing we'll be getting into later is Peter J. Carroll's take on how exorcism works. But to summarize some thoughts that are popular in Chaos Magick, if you were overwhelmed with anger, of course, you could conceptualize that as just basic psychology. You can also choose to think of it as being possessed by, let's say, Mars or Ares.
Yeah, that was the example I was thinking of. You know, you're some Roman soldier covered in blood at the end of a day-long battle, and everybody who witnesses you looks at you like you're some high priest of Mars, and you feel a certain way because we're only human and we're compelled to feel a way when we do things, and it's kind of universal for everybody. Certain things, you know, bathing in water is relaxing for every human being, and we feel a certain way. It activates our brain.
Yes, absolutely. And when you are trying to court someone so you could do the nasty with them, you may behave differently than you do, let's say, around your mom, right? Or if you're a boss at work, do you behave the same way and react the same way when you're out with your friends? No. You're a totally different person. And as we get older, we actually tend to become more like our social outward personality, and we begin to be less imaginative and diverse beings. And part of being an artist or an actor or even a magician is learning how to embody those different aspects of ourselves, or you could even argue become possessed by those gods, spirits, or energies.
For sure.
Yeah, totally agree.
And while we've discussed it in our Joker episode where we talk about Heath Ledger, we know that Jack Nicholson told Heath Ledger, don't do the Joker role. It's going to be bad. And it turned out that it may have been due to some conspiracy, which we more or less prove in our episode, but they wouldn't let him put that personality down and banish it. And it actually did result in his demise. And so it could be argued that actors and actresses, even if we live in a totally materialistic, spiritless universe, can still become possessed and suffer the consequences of it, for better or for worse. Like a good actor that is doing the role beautifully is essentially being possessed by a spirit. We know that Jim Carrey was acting out mannerisms and aspects of Andy Kaufman that only his family knew about. How is he doing it? And it's because even outside of a religious experience, people are capable of channeling spirits or behaving in a way as if they're possessed by one. Whether or not they exist, well, that's up to you, the listener.
Yeah, and then some people would also describe afflictions and illnesses, and this is like perhaps tribal cultures or I guess non-traditional cultures would explain mental illness and stuff, but we're not really talking about that. We're focusing more on the actual supernatural ones that can't be explained by any kind of, medical diagnosis.
Well, let's get into it. As we normally strive to take a diverse approach to esoteric topics, one thing becomes abundantly clear while researching spirit possession in particular. The Roman Catholic Church has a total monopoly over the entire concept and dominates any narrative concerning how and why it functions, even extending to encompass a relationship with the edges of medical science through the psychologists employed by the church to validate or invalidate potential victims of demonic possession prior to exorcism and it being approved by the clergy, although tenuous and narrow. This alliance constitutes a bridge between modern mainstream science and the otherwise medieval Catholic worldview not enjoyed by other faiths or culturally informed spiritual beliefs. This makes for a particularly potent echo chamber about the topic and serves as the tip of the spear in terms of converting new believers to the faith. In short, you probably never will find a book about the subject of possession that does not spend entire chapters attempting to inject large doses of Catholic dogma, with the surest exception being occult literature, which is, within said books, named as the primary cause for possession in the first place. It goes something like, are you experiencing adverse spiritual phenomena you know your doctor doesn't believe in? We offer the only viable solution, which numerous medical authorities have documented, and any effort to learn about it outside of this paradigm will only make it worse. It was probably caused by that in the first place. Repent and convert now.
So annoying. It's like, where's the skip ad button?
There is none. You
I
must
know.
listen to the Catholic ad if you're going to learn about this stuff.
They're the
Period.
only ones that wrote it down. So I guess they get to claim the fame, I guess.
Or you got Aleister Crowley twisting you into knots with his riddles, or you got to turn over to Chaos Magick and have Peter Carroll
Or check out a shaman in the rainforest and do DMT. I don't know.
Yeah, but most people just aren't going to do that, you know?
Crowley was like, yeah, you need to do drugs and you need to be weird. And that's pleasure for me.
You got to take it in the pooper, is what he says.
Well, he did say that.
Now, this does wonders to reinforce the veracity of one memorable statement made by the Church of Satan founder Anton LaVey in the Satanic Bible. He says,
Satan has been the best friend the church has ever had, as he kept it in business all these years.
Brilliant.
I mean, it's true.
My mom always told me Satan goes to church every Sunday. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, he's the one giving the sermon.
My mom was always the one telling me there's a weirdo on every single street. Be careful.
Your mom sounds like she knows what she's talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Now, even still, if you listen closely to the words of Roman Catholic exorcists, they do admit that numerous signs of negative spiritual possession may be experienced by saints, prophets, and holy men, but in a positive way, when it happens to be the work of God and his good angels.
So wait, you're telling me if you're possessed by a good spirit, then all of a sudden it's sunshine and rainbows? I mean, I think that's interesting how their religious dogma seems to keep the duality of the material realm going, even in the higher spiritual realm, like pitting these opposite forces against each other with a hero like God and angels and the scapegoat, Satan and demons. It's kind of like a spiritual football rivalry to me.
Yeah, I totally vibe with the dualistic idea here, which is saying that all this power, the power to possess and to get into a human, it's all through some sort of filter and the grace of God.
It took me a long time to figure this out because, you know, you hear grace and graceful as words since you're little, but I recently found out that grace is actually an action of being possessed and channeling God's spirit itself, like the Holy Spirit.
Yeah, it's his will. It's like you're in line with your true will, so to speak. This is the path that nothing can block, and I can interpret it as examples seen on the Tree of Life. If you understand the relationship that Kether, the topmost sphere, has, what its relationship is with the rest of the tree, it contains everything underneath it. And there's no more duality. Like, there is an idea in the upper portions with the next spheres being separate and, bipolar, but there is an idea of culminating past that where there's no longer a duality. And I think that's like the completed possession. There's no longer a separation between the spirit and the human. It's like the whole operation on the tree is complete and integration with the angel or the demon. So what I'm saying is that the purest power is not good or bad in a Kabbalistic understanding. It's a balanced force beyond space and time, and it's completely limitless, like the Force.
Now, as esoteric as that may have sounded, I'm happy you said it, because it's not all sunshine and rainbows, even if you're being possessed by a holy force. And I think that's what you're getting at is, if you're possessed of the spirit in its most potent form, you're going to get the good with the bad, and the duality is going to disappear. And that's what we're going to be discussing today, is how similar being possessed by good or evil actually is, and how much overlap between the two is recorded and understood. So let's get into that. One well-known symptom of demonic possession includes the ability to prophesy future events, a miracle so ubiquitous in the Bible it hardly warrants mentioning. Perhaps the best known example comes from John of Revelations, who was given a vision of the apocalypse by Jesus Christ himself, to which numerous chapters at the end of the New Testament are devoted. On the demonic side of things, psychiatrist Richard Gallagher claims that at least one victim of possession was able to accurately taunt him about the details of his mother's death, which had recently come to pass. And even still, the same person could foretell what would happen in the future. In Gallagher's book, Demonic Foes, he elaborates this particular client, codenamed Julia, who was a, quote, satanic high priestess and co-leader of a cult dedicated to Satan. Her gifts of power were explained as a benefit of her pact with the Lord of Darkness himself. Gallagher and others were awed by Julia's ability to even see the private dwelling places where members of his team resided. This demonic feat actually appears in the Bible in Acts 16 through 19, where Paul, in a state of exasperation, exorcises the sponsoring spirit from a prominent female diviner.
It's Bible time.
It's Bible time!
So Acts 16 starts. As we were going to the place of prayer, we were met by a slave girl who had a spirit of divination and brought her owners much gain by fortune telling. She followed Paul and us, crying out, "These men are servants of the Most High God, who proclaim you to the way of salvation." And this she kept doing for many days. Paul, having become greatly annoyed, turned and said to the spirit, "I command you in the name of Jesus Christ to come out of her." And it came out that very hour. But when her owners saw that their hope of gain was gone, they seized Paul and Silas and dragged them into the marketplace before the rulers. "You broke my magic money machine. I was going to win the lottery."
What stands out to me in this story is that the diviner was saying something that these two apostles apparently could agree with. Like, this is the way that salvation is going to come, through Jesus Christ and the evangel that's being preached by Paul and Silas. But they get so annoyed, they cast the spirit out of her anyway. What?
Well, they're trying to keep a low profile, man. That's like too much attention.
I mean, her spirit was telling the truth, even according to the... I don't know. It seems a little rude, but hey, you know. So in that same vein of thought, one of the most reliable ways to diagnose a demonic possession, one that even convinces some doctors, is the sudden ability to speak in various languages the victim would have absolutely no way of knowing. Today, this is known as xenoglossia, the coolest word you're going to hear on this show.
It was pretty cool.
You know what's interesting about that word? It contains the word xeno, which means like alien.
Or unknown. Yeah.
Yeah.
Alien speak. That's what it means.
Mi nam na yao huai huai huaxiki piping.
They're not lying. They're like, hey, these demons and angels, they're aliens.
In Acts 2, this same ability is possessed of Peter and the other 12 apostles of Christ as a powerful boon given by God himself.
Gotta preach the word all over the world.
Yes, as it says in Acts 2, 1 through 8.
And when the day of Pentecost was fully come, they were all with one accord in one place. And suddenly there came a sound from heaven as of a rushing mighty wind. And it filled all the house where they were sitting. And there appeared unto them cloven tongues like as of fire, and it sat upon each of them. And they were all filled with the Holy Ghost, and began to speak with other tongues as the Spirit gave them utterance. And there were dwelling at Jerusalem Jews, devout men, out of every nation under heaven. Now when this was noised abroad, the multitude came together and were confounded, because that every man heard them speak in his own language. And they were all amazed and marveled, saying to one another, Behold, are not all these which speak Galileans? And how hear we every man in our own tongue, wherein we were born? They had the Google Translate audio feature on their voice box.
They had the Babelfish powers.
Mm-hmm.
Well, this particular verse explains how the apostles were able to miraculously evangelize the gospel to anyone in their native language. Catholic exorcists often claim that the demonically possessed will reply intelligibly to prayers given in Latin, or even sometimes taunt and excoriate clergy present in their mother's tongue.
You speak Latin? Goetia, absolvo.
Yeah, a lot of these instances, they tend to be like Aramaic, Babylonian, Hebrew, and Latin. That's the other primary in Greek. It's all these old antiquitous languages. It reminds me of, the snake churches where they speak in tongues and
Yes.
get healed by laying of hands.
The Pentecostals.
I guess that's what they are then. I mean, I've been to a Pentecostal church and there was none of that going on, but I'm talking about the weird ones that are up in the mountains, like with the hillbillies. That kind of reminds me of that. That's like an homage of these passages in Acts, and the fact that the people are speaking tongues. It almost appears, if you've ever watched one of these events, that they are being exorcised by having these fits of talking in tongues.
Yes.
I think it's a bunch of baloney though.
I think it's kind of fun.
It's fun though. Yeah.
I think just from a chaos magic perspective, if you're so, quote, possessed of the spirit that you can just babble incoherently and handle poisonous snakes, then more power to you, buddy.
Yeah, I ordered a book about that kind of snake practice. I haven't read it yet.
It's really interesting, honestly, because apparently they claim that you can be bitten by the venomous snake and be healed by doing this ritual. Like, you won't get sick and fall to the floor and die.
Well, that's power, right? That's magic power. Like if I
It's
ever saw
weird.
it, like if I saw somebody get bit by a the most deadly snake in the world, and they're like, "No, trust me, Jesus got's my back. Watch this, homeboy." And I'd be like, "All right, I believe in Jesus now." Like,
You can remove the venom glands, so who knows?
well, that's why I bring the snake.
Bring your own snake party.
Speaking of which, you know how hard it was to kill Rasputin?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it wasn't Jesus, or was it? Now, other symptoms of demonic possession also include supernatural strength and a proclivity towards violence, which, in its positive, God-given aspect, is attributed to Samson in spectacular fashion in Judges 15. I love this story. As it goes, when Samson returns to Israel, he discovers that his wife has been given by her father to one of his companions. In retaliation, he commits eco-terrorism by going out to catch 300 foxes. He ties a fiery torch between their tails in sets of 2, and then releases them into the grain fields owned by the Philistines, burning them down to a crisp.
Fire foxes.
Yeah, fire foxes, go figure. Interestingly, if we take an esoteric point of view, it just so happens the number 300 corresponds to the Hebrew letter shin when it's spelled out completely. The Hebrew letter shin also means fire, so a little bit of Bible gematria going on in this story.
Noise.
Then when we go over to our deck of tarot cards and look at which major arcana is associated with the Hebrew letter shin, we find it on none other than, of course, the Judgment card, the name of the book where the story takes place. Now, after Samson burns down the fields, he goes and he climbs up to a high rock to sit, where the Israelites, fearing the wrath of the Philistines, attempt a citizen's arrest on Samson in order to turn him in. In Judges 15:13, it describes what happens directly afterwards and the supernatural strength given to Samson during this debacle.
And they spake unto him, saying, No, but we will bind thee fast and deliver thee into their hand, but surely we will not kill thee. And they bound him with 2 new cords, and brought him up from the rock. And when he came unto Lehi, the Philistines shouted against him, and the Spirit of the Lord came mightily upon him, and the cords that were upon his arms became as flax that was burnt with fire, and his bands loosened from off his hands. And he found a new jawbone of an ass, and put forth his hand, and took it, and slew 1,000 men therewith. Oh, that's badass.
So he killed 1,000 men with a jawbone of a donkey.
Yes.
Yeah, that's cool as f***. He's like the Duke Nukem of the Bible.
Yes, he is, Mari. I come to kill Philistines and chew bubble gum, but I'm all out of gum.
That would make a really good game.
Yes, it would. Now, the last line of Judges 15 says that Samson spent the next 20 years as a judge in Israel during the reign of the Philistines. He's basically Judge Dredd of the Bible, you know.
Ah, so appropriate.
Now, I thought it was interesting that the God of the Bible would give a blessing that would include superhuman strength to perpetuate a mass murder killing spree with nothing but unbridled rage and the bones of a donkey.
Well, maybe God was having a bad day and needed to take it out on something.
In the case of demonic possession, it also would not be unusual for the victim to demonstrate demonically boosted levels of super strength, which is often attributed to otherwise small women and girls who suddenly find themselves able to throw priests across the room and require multiple fully grown adults to restrain them for hours at a time.
Oh, yeah. And listening to accounts of exorcists dealing with these people, a lot of things that came up were someone would sit in a chair and slump so heavily that it took 3 or 4 people to carry them out, and they had to carry them out with the chair attached to them because they wouldn't get out of it.
Oh.
Then there's also accounts of, and there's multiple witnesses of this happening at the same time, of people crawling up a wall, running up a wall or sideways on a wall, or even onto the ceiling. So Spider-Man moves. I mean, it's nuts.
It comes up quite a bit.
Yeah, or they'll have like an extreme amount of finesse and acrobatic skill out of nowhere, very flexible, maybe even dislocating their own body parts to do this.
Yeah, superhuman stuff.
Now, one reason I'm willing to believe some of this is true is because I've had a handful of these experiences myself. I'm really hesitant to talk about it in the free show, but here we go. Once upon a time, when I was young and even dumber than I am now, I was doing psychedelics and I had the brilliant idea to give some very strong LSD to my girlfriend at the time. She did not handle it well. At some point, we were watching Smashing Pumpkins' Viewphoria, which is great, and she kind of just zoned out like really zoned out, like looking through the television, eyes big and black, like black saucerous holes of emptiness. And at some point, she turned to me with this otherworldly look in her eye, reached out and grabbed one of my curled locks of hair, like a big chunk of it, and just plucked it out like it was a dandelion.
Oh.
Like, it was a lot of hair. Like, it
Ow.
required some strength to do it, you know? Like, I would have to tug a little bit to pull out that much hair of somebody. She just plucked it out like it was nothing. Then she began humping a vacuum cleaner and pretty much everything in sight, which was worrisome. And also, the smell suddenly began to suffuse the room. And this smell was unlike anything I've ever smelled come off a person. Like, it was awful and vivid and disgusting and acrid and whatever adjectives you want to throw out there. Like, and fast forward a bit later on, she was not possessed of this smell afterwards. So whatever this was like some weird supernatural odor. And then she kind of like progressed, becoming more and more violent to the point where it took 5 fully grown dudes to restrain her at all times. And this went on for so many hours. She was like growling and snarling and screaming a scream that no one should ever have to hear. And the look in her eyes was like a wild animal. Like, not the person I knew, not the person that I was in a relationship with. This was like some other being had taken over this person. And it was maybe the scariest thing I've ever been through, possibly. And she only came out of it when I began to panic. The other people in the room that were tasked with restraining her were like, we can't keep doing this. Like, we're not strong enough. We don't have the energy. There's no way for us to help this person conceivably. We're going to have to drop her off at the hospital and just see what happens. And at that point, I was like, well, my life's over. Like, we can't do that. Like, what are we going to tell our parents? Like, what are we going to tell the hospital? What are we going to do? Just drive by and kick her out of the car? Like, this isn't going to end well. Like, this is bad. This is really, really, really bad. And I went outside. I saved the lock of hair that she pulled out of my head. And I made a sigil the way they explain in Chaos Magick. And I gave like the most sincere prayer I had ever given up until that point. I was like, dear God, please help. Like, I need help. I need it now. I'm calling in a favor. Like, this has to happen. I need this. Like, you got to help me. And I burned the lock of hair in front of the sigil. And all of a sudden, from the other room, she just began calming down. And
Whoa.
yeah, thankfully, one of my friends put on Enya.
That's great.
And she like fell asleep, like chilled out. And when she came to, she was like her old self again. And better still, she had absolutely no memory of any of it at all.
Wow.
And like when she came to and didn't have a memory of it, the rest of us were like not okay. You know, we were all like sitting around with her like, so you don't remember the part where you were screaming and humping the vacuum cleaner and like scratching in our faces and like throwing us off of you and like causing a general distress? And she's like, no, I remember a dragon at one point, but that's about it. It was really pretty. But yeah, no, I'm fine. And she
So weird.
So the reptilians got to her.
Yes, or Satan. I mean, like, we've learned that dragons have a particularly potent place in Christianity once you unfurl the symbolism. I didn't know that at the time. I knew she liked dragons. So, you know, she survived. We kind of survived. The smell was gone. She didn't remember any of it. So I tend to believe this stuff is real. I mean, I'm sure weird things can happen on psychedelics, but never again. So be careful out there, psychonauts. You could just get your face clawed off and your hair pulled out by a demon that humps vacuum cleaners. I'm just warning you. Now, to continue exploring this dichotomy between holy and demonic possession, a litany of other supernatural abilities attributed to the demonically possessed are also well-recorded feats said to regularly be accomplished by various Catholic saints. There's no shortage of exorcism cases where levitation is claimed of the victim. Some include the infamous exorcism of Annalise Michael, the inspiration for the exorcism of Emily Rose, a film I enjoyed, and Roland Doe, the inspiration for The Exorcist. In both cases, Annalise and Roland were said to have levitated several feet above their chair during exorcism, with multiple witnesses to back up these claims. There was like 14 priests that backed up this story in the case of Roland Doe. And then this also happened in that case of Julia, with the psychologist Gallagher speaking on it. Apparently, they needed like 5 priests to like pull Julia down from her levitation. Like, it was something was keeping her up in the air, and gravity gave no fucks.
She's not my girlfriend. I find her interesting because she's a client and because she sleeps above her covers, 4 feet above her covers. She barks, she drools, she claws.
I make it a rule never to get involved with possessed people. Actually, it's more of a guideline than a rule.
Then if we go over to the holy side of things, the same powers are well-known attributions to saints like Saint Francis of Assisi, who is said to have levitated during intense prayer between 1 and 2 meters off the ground in the small chapel known as Porziuncula. Similarly, Alphonsus Liguori, an Italian bishop from the 1700s and now patron saint of confessors, was also said to have levitated several feet off the ground in front of his whole congregation while preaching at Foggia. Specifically, he had been preaching upon the Blessed Sacrament, and with his eyes fixed in religious ecstasy upon the consecrated host, began to levitate for quite some time, before he and the Blessed Wafer gradually came back down and the sermon continued as normal. It's kind of fun to imagine. He's just holding this blessed cracker up in the air, like staring at it like, you know, a crack fiend that just got a rock the size of a bowling ball, and he like suddenly just starts floating upward as he's preaching about the power of this holy host. And then just like nothing, he just slowly comes back down and it just keeps going. Well, apparently this made quite the impression on the people listening to his sermon, and presumably they all had the crackers afterwards.
That turn into the flesh of Jesus in your
Yes,
stomach, apparently.
yes.
So it's all reptilian. I mean,
You have to eat the flesh and the blood of the Savior. And like, this wouldn't be the first time the host has been the central role of a miracle. We learned about, and this is saying something, in our mass hysteria episode, those 3 little kids that saw the Our Lady of Guadalupe, like that was a big part of their vision. It's like, there's Jesus Christ and the Virgin Mary, and like there's the Holy Host, and it's dripping blood into a chalice. And I think they actually got some of the blood from that vision. Like, it's a big deal. It's an important cracker.
they are tasty.
Tasty, tasty salvation. Now, Alphonsus Liguori is also said to have been possessed of the ability to bilocate, which means to be in 2 separate locations simultaneously. According to legend, on the morning of September 22nd, in 1774, Liguori announced to those around him that he had attended the death of Pope Clement XIV at his bedside in Rome, which was, at the time, a 4 days' journey away. This was before Learjets and UFOs, etc. At first, nobody believed him because he had since been confined to a cell for a fast and had not left the premises. Later, everyone was floored when the news arrived that Pope Clement had in fact died with Liguori at his bedside.
That's kind of cool. And it makes some sense, even if it was like a, in this case, it was like a holy ability, but even if it was a demonic bilocation capability, it makes sense because if there's only a certain amount of demons, like, can that single one possess multiple people, or is it like there's a different demon for every, maybe one demon out there or a couple of them can, in fact, multi-possess human bodies. Maybe that's a power, and it's why we can bilocate once we are possessed by that demon or something.
Or in this case, Jesus Christ, or one of his angels.
Right.
Now, I'm sad that I didn't find it, but I looked and I looked and I looked and I looked and I just couldn't find it. But there's an old myth from American history where, and I can't remember who, I can't remember when, but I believe it's even happened more than once. There's this important bill that's going to be voted on or something in the Senate or Congress, and there's a big vote and it's important that everyone show up. Now, occasionally one of our representatives is like sick and dying at home. They're on their deathbed. Maybe they even died earlier that day. And according to myth, this same person that's at home dying somehow miraculously shows up to vote on this important measure. But then later they find out like, oh, he was actually at home dying or even dead.
Oh, they use proxies.
That's what I found on Google, but that's not the myth. Like, I'd heard about these stories, but I couldn't even find one of the stories. I know they exist, but I couldn't find it. If you know one of these damn U.S. history myths of bilocation and showing up to vote in Congress, please join the Discord or send it to me on Messenger. I want to tell the story. But yeah, bilocation is a thing.
Our current Congress members should learn this trick too, because they're often not even there and they don't even vote. So what if you could not be there, but also vote?
Here's the problem why that wouldn't work. You have to really care.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, you can't be these people were incapacitated in their beds on their last dying breath, and the vote somehow shows up. And this was back before computer communication and all that. So I guess that's pretty crazy.
It's not even religion. It's just government. If people can bilocate for government, they certainly can bilocate for Jesus or Satan, whatever.
This is almost like a remote viewing-esque ability as well, if you're able to do this.
My inner skeptic was like, Man, he just had someone poison the Pope dressed as him so he could have a better chance at becoming Pope. I mean, and to be fair, this particular spiritual feat of bilocation is pretty well understated in the Christian tradition, but it's much more well known in the Hindu world with prominent gurus like Sri Yukteswar, Lahiri Mahasaya, and even Neem Karoli Baba being well attested in the ability to perform bilocation. Like, they just do it all the time. Apparently, it's much more frightening when a demon possesses an individual and they happen to do it, although it's usually more like the possessed person disappears and then reappears spontaneously, which is still pretty frightening.
So yeah, I see that Eastern religions and philosophies seem to see all energy on a continuum like spectrum, from the destructive and subtractive all the way up to the generative and positive. I mean, even at CERN, we discussed this a few episodes back, there is a statue of Shiva, and that's the destroyer god from the Hindu faith. In order to teleport, you would need to obliterate your body and replicate it perfectly in the space-time continuum at another location. And that's faster than the speed of light. It's like we were talking about the Planck length. A Planck length of time would be how much time it would have to take for you to teleport, with like a seamless motion. And part of the travel does involve destroying the original, which is where Shiva comes in, but Shiva is also known for being generative and creating new things out of the destroyed old pieces. So the manifestation elsewhere of your new body in the teleportation is part of that whole destructive process. So it's a give and take of energy from the negative to the positive.
So if you read the biography of Yogananda, where he tells in detail the story of Sri Yukteswar and Lahiri Mahayasa, the guru lineage that he's trained under, he'll tell you, like, there's a story of this one guy who got into a relationship with a jinn who made it possible for him to disappear pretty much anything he could think of and have it reappear wherever he could think of. And he used it selfishly. And the whole point of the story is that these powers are not the end of the spiritual journey. They're more like a distraction. Like, if you have these powers, you're supposed to kind of ignore them and focus on attaining enlightenment. Stranger still, like, even Catholic exorcists will say this. They'll be like, well, the demon's just doing that to distract the priest from giving the exorcism. Like, he's supposed to be doing his reading of the prayers and focusing on Jesus Christ. And, the more the demon levitates and spews vomit everywhere and, like, climbs on the walls and bilocates and whatever, it's just to distract you from what's really going on. And it's interesting that it's portrayed that way in the Hindu tradition as well.
I guess it's like, if you are able to do such powers and you asked an expert, a priest or a shaman, they would tell you, okay, well, you're pretty potent. It's like, you're an Anakin. We have to be careful with you. You could potentially like blow this whole thing up. It might be best to redirect that energy into the true path, whether it's Jesus or, really learning some yoga and how to channel that energy into something else. You probably will go and transcend the realms beyond just lifting up items with your mind or teleporting. I guess I'm in line with that completely.
Well, yeah, it shouldn't be used as parlor tricks, or, perhaps the evil spirit will use it as a distraction. But if you're imbibed with these powers, it's probably more wise to only use them when very necessary, in case of emergency. Like, Luke, when you were made a sigil and burned your hair lock, that is kind of like calling on that power for an emergency. Like, you're not going to use that every day just to pick up your Starbucks coffee from the takeout window into your car. Like, you're not going to like levitate stuff just to impress people. Like, you need to conserve that and only use it when it's absolutely necessary, is what I'm seeing. Otherwise, it can be considered evil.
What do they say? Both a supreme invocation to Jupiter or a quarter will get you on the subway? To continue exploring these powers, spontaneous and inexplicable wounds are also a well-known feature of demonic possession. In the case of Roland Doe, the one who inspired the Exorcist movie, it was said that during the height of his torment, his mother was considering moving him somewhere else more suited for an effective exorcism when the words Lewis appeared lightly scratched on his ribcage. Shortly after, while considering the day of departure and the length of said stay, the phrase 3.5 weeks appeared on his chest, while the word Saturday appeared on the boy's hip, supposedly without use of his hand. As it turns out, this would correspond to the location and time frame when the demons would eventually be cast out of Roland's body in Alexian Brothers Hospital in St. Louis. And that's kind of weird. It's like, why are you listening to the demons that are writing on your kid's body? Like, aren't you supposed to not listen to the demons? Although there is something to be said for during an exorcism, the Catholic priest will often ask the demon to announce the time of its departure. Because apparently it knows. It knows that it has a limited amount of time in most cases.
Give me a deadline.
Yeah, give me the time that you're going to leave. And we're just going to make life difficult until then. I mean, psychologically, that also makes sense if there is no such thing as spirits or God or whatever. Like, you're priming the person to, like, have a time when this is over, which is kind of clever, but go ahead.
You know, this is another similarity with the alien stuff is unexplainable markings and cuts and things like that. That's why we're talking about this now, demon possession, because it does relate to aliens in many ways. It's kind of weird.
Yeah, most of these things can be attributed to abduction or alien.
Levitation. They lifted them up with their UFO beam. Like, that's just what we were talking about.
And while I don't have it on the list, missing time. In the case of my experience, my girlfriend had missing time.
Also, downloaded knowledge.
Yep, all that stuff comes with aliens as well.
I just want to mention it also happens with angel encounters too, and like ascending to heaven. There's so many stories of, saints being lifted up, like levitating up to heaven.
It's pretty much the same thing, but two different sides of the spectrum.
When they do it on chariots, they got big wheels of fire with eyeballs. You know what we call it today? Tractor beams. That's what. So as unremarkable as inexplicable wounds first sounds, apparently it's so well documented that mainstream medical science even has a name for it. It's called psychogenic purpura, also known as Gardner-Diamond syndrome. Psychogenic purpura is characterized by the sudden appearance of painful, purplish skin lesions, which over 24 hours tend to become noticeably bruised. To qualify, these wounds must appear without the presence of external trauma and almost always correspond to intense psychological stress. Medical professionals are actually still not sure what the scientific mechanism is behind the condition, suggesting though that it might have to do with an autoimmune response or a sudden fragility taking hold of the blood capillaries. But nonetheless, it is documented by medical science.
Also, if you have created a reality in your brain or you have some kind of idea that you obsess over with a lot of stress, fear, and anxiety, it can begin to manifest in reality, So it could be having to do with a psychometric part that's not necessarily physical, but could add influence onto that.
Well, that's what they're saying. Now, apparently, in 1927, according to the National Institutes of Health, the German psychiatrist Rudolf Schindler described 16 patients with skin hemorrhages. He suggested a possible link to hypnosis, and this was corroborated in a few subsequent case reports in either causing or relieving these lesions. So, like, you're getting sleepy, your skin is opening up and bleeding. Like, okay, whew. Talk about the power of hypnotism, right? Now, the holy variation of spontaneous wounds tends to be a bit more dramatic. This phenomena is known as stigmata, a plural Greek term meaning spot, mark, or brand, and are said to be the wounds which spontaneously appear upon the pious in the likeness of those Christ suffered during his crucifixion. The first recorded and most famous case of stigmata is said to have occurred to Saint Francis of Assisi just 2 years prior to his death in 1224. Francis had been on a retreat in the Apennine Mountains near the town of La Verna, Italy. It was here that Saint Francis had sought solitude to pray and become more immersed in the spirit of Christ by contemplating the suffering that Jesus underwent during his crucifixion, when suddenly a six-winged seraphic angel descended upon him during a moment of religious ecstasy. As the angel drew nearer to Saint Francis, he noticed the angel bore the wounds of Christ upon his hands, feet, and side. As the vision unfolded, Francis began to feel an intense burning pain at these places on his body, as if he was undergoing the same intense pain Christ felt as he was nailed to the cross. It was during this vision, actual wounds were said to appear, described as gleaming and flowing with fresh red blood. Although he tried to keep the wounds a secret, his companions eventually noticed and interpreted them as an indication of Assisi's sincere devotion to Christ. For the remaining 2 years of his life, the wounds would never heal, but rather than stink with infection, were described as perfume-smelling and were quick to issue fresh blood.
That's so goth.
Also, if you haven't watched the 1990s film Stigmata, check it out. It's a good time. It's got a little Gnostic spin on the whole situation. It's definitely gets the whole rabbit seal of approval. Now, While stigmata is not described explicitly in the Bible, a line from Galatians has been used to understand the nature of this strange phenomenon. In Galatians 6:17, Peter says,
From henceforth let no man trouble me, for I bear in my body the marks of the Lord Jesus.
Now, as far as we know, Peter did mean that spiritually, psychologically. I don't think he's ever been attributed the stigmata, but, that's the one place in the Bible you could quote from to maybe explain why it happens. Now, since St. Francis of Assisi, a number of other would-be Catholic saints also experienced stigmata. One of the most famous cases from relatively recent history was that of Padre Pio. For anyone who doesn't know, this is the dude who looks exactly like Obi-Wan Kenobi. Now, Padre Pio was born Francesco Forgione in May of 1887 in southern Italy to a pair of peasant farmers. By the age of 5, Francesco knew he wanted to live a life devoted to God and was subject to religious ecstasies even during childhood. He served as an altar boy and tended a flock of sheep until the age of 10. Alongside poverty, Francesco was also plagued with regular gastroenteritis, the poops, and even fell plague to typhoid fever during his youth. None of that sounds like any fun. Now, after just 3 years of public schooling, Francesco decided that he wanted to join a nearby monastery after hearing one of its friars preach in public one day. Hearing this, his family traveled 13 miles north to Marconi to see if he was eligible to join the order of Capuchin friars, who told them they were interested in the boy, but only after receiving additional schooling. Apparently, he didn't know shit. Now, his father immigrated to the USA in order to work so he could afford Francesco a tutor, and by January 1903, at the age of 15, he was accepted into the order, taking the name of Friar Pio. So he got his Jedi title. Afterwards, he began his 7-year study for the priesthood in Umbria, Italy, at the Friary of St. Francis of Assisi. Not long after, at the age of 17, Padre Pio would become so afflicted with illness, those around him began to feel that they were of paranormal origin. He lost his appetite. He suffered severe insomnia, exhaustion. He suffered fainting spells, and of course, migraines. To make things worse, when he did eat, he would vomit, and was said to only be able to digest milk and cheese.
That's a lot of poo.
Some people live off milk and cheese. Me. So if you ever need an excuse for being addicted to quesomorphins, remember, Padre Pio probably was too. In fact, that might explain the migraines, because if you are truly hooked on eating cheese and you don't eat cheese, you will get migraines. I know, because that's the way I get migraines, because there's this stuff in cheese called quesomorphins, and the morphins is the same morphins that's in morphine. It's a painkiller, a natural one. So do with that as you will. And if the hippies are correct, the cows were eating hemp, and you were getting a little bit of that hemp magic in the milk, which has since exited our diet completely. So this guy was getting high on dairy. But let's continue. One of his fellow friars claimed that it was not uncommon for Pio to enter religious ecstasy while praying, and even levitate above the ground. Despite these claims, Pio was forthcoming that he also experienced periods of spiritual dryness and a darkening of the faith. So he struggled, and that's part of being a holy person. You have to struggle, and you have to be beguiled by demons. So, it's all in the mix. Then, on September 20th of 1918, Padre Pio would receive stigmata while praying to Christ in the choir loft of the Capuchin Friary in San Giovanni Rotondo, Italy. According to legend, he was deep in prayer when he beheld a vision of Christ bearing the wounds of crucifixion, later describing him as a man of great beauty and kindness. As he gazed upon the vision, he was smitten with awe, joy, and intense pain. Like St. Francis before him, Padre Pio had become possessed of holes in his palms and feet, while also suffering a large gash in his side, which issued blood regularly and smelled sweet like perfume. Although he labored, like St. Francis, to obscure the wounds from sight, his brethren eventually noticed. But unlike St. Francis, who died shortly after, Padre Pio would bear these wounds, which remained fresh for another 50 years. Thereafter, a litany of other bizarre phenomena were ascribed to Padre Pio, including gifts of healing, bilocation, levitation, prophecy, various miracles, extraordinary abstinence from both sleep and nourishment. One account states that Padre Pio, specifically this was recorded by Padre Agostino, that at least in one instance, Pio was able to subsist for 20 days on just the Holy Eucharist without any other nourishment. So he was serious. He also had the ability to read hearts. He had the gift of tongues, the gift of conversion, and as mentioned earlier, even though the wounds of his stigmata never fully healed and continued to issue blood, they always smelled pleasant.
Okay, what if he was just putting some sweet pastries that were blood colored all over himself, and that's the sweet smell, and they thought it was wounds?
This is where the inner skeptic has to really kick in, where you're like, was this guy literally mutilating himself for 50 years to keep up this charade and then somehow kept the wounds from getting infected? Like, whew, it's an awfully intense claim. But he also is one of these individuals who in his death became incorruptible, meaning you can still go see his corpse on display and like 100 years later, I guess it's not 100 years yet, he's still fresh, you know? His body is still intact, he doesn't stink, he's not rotting, he's incorruptible, just like those aliens they're keeping on ice at Area 51. Thank you, everybody. If you'd like to hear the rest of the show where we talk about Japanese folklore, the spirits that may possess you in that culture, Furbies, Ouija boards,
Psychology, I guess just general riffraff about drugs and craziness.
portals, Peter, Carol, Chaos Magic, then please visit www.patreon.com/thewholerabbit, where your monthly donation of just $5 will not only get you the extended version of this show, but all of our shows, which are then compatible with your current Spotify application on your device of choice. But not only that, I'll send you a 5x5 high quality vinyl sticker of our big Bunfamit bunny cover art and the secret keys to our Discord server, where you could talk to us about that time you maybe took too many psychedelics and began barking like a demon and humping vacuum cleaners. Thank you, everybody. Eat carrots and shoot lasers.